Have you ever looked at your lab results and thought I feel fine? So how could my kidneys be getting worse? If you're over 55, that question alone should stop you cold, because kidney failure almost never announces itself with pain. It creeps in quietly meal by meal until one ordinary doctor's visit ends with a word no one is prepared to hear: dialysis. I'm Dr. Johnny, and here's the urgent truth most people are never told. It's not sugar. It's not fat. It's not even protein that pushes so many Americans into kidney failure faster than expected. It's potassium, an everyday mineral hiding in foods you've been told are healthy, silently building up while your kidneys lose the ability to protect you. You can look perfectly normal on the outside while inside your heart rhythm destabilizes, your creatinine rises, and your GFR drops far faster than you ever imagined. And this is exactly why so many patients tell me the same thing: "Doctor, I thought I was eating right." The good news, if you stay with me, is that kidney decline is not just about what to avoid. It's about learning how to eat strategically, calmly, and intelligently. In this video, I'm going to show you simple everyday foods that kidney specialists use to reduce potassium overload, stabilize labs, and help patients delay or even avoid dialysis altogether. One of them may already be sitting in your kitchen, and how you use it could change the future of your kidneys. When kidney function begins to decline, the first instinct most people have is to eliminate carbohydrates. They've been told for years that carbs are the problem, that white foods are empty, and that brown, whole, and fiber-rich options are always better. But for weakened kidneys, this well-intended belief quietly becomes a trap. This is why white rice often becomes the first turning point in kidney protection, not because it's trendy, but because it removes pressure where the kidneys are already failing. I remember a man in his early 60s who came to see me confused and frightened. His potassium kept creeping up, his creatinine was rising, and his GFR had slipped below 55. He looked at me and said, "Doctor, I don't understand. I only eat healthy foods, brown rice, whole grains, vegetables at every meal." What he didn't realize was that his kidneys were no longer strong enough to handle that mineral load. When we replaced those foods with properly portioned white rice, something remarkable happened. Within weeks, his potassium stabilized. His labs stopped drifting in the wrong direction. Not because white rice healed his kidneys, but because it stopped overwhelming them. Here's the science behind that shift. 1 cup of cooked white rice contains roughly 50 to 60 milligrams of potassium, well below the 200 milligram threshold considered low potassium. Brown rice, by comparison, contains nearly 3 times more potassium and significantly more phosphorus, both of which damaged kidneys struggle to eliminate. White rice also produces very little digestive residue, making it easier to tolerate for patients dealing with uremia, nausea, or poor appetite. When cooked in extra water and drained, its mineral load drops even further, turning it into a reliable energy source that doesn't demand extra filtration work. And this is the real lesson. White rice isn't about enjoyment, it's about management. It gives your body fuel while allowing your kidneys to breathe. But understanding white rice alone isn't enough, because there's another everyday food people fear just as much, and when used correctly, it can either protect your kidneys just as powerfully or quietly undo everything you've worked to stabilize. After people finally understand why white rice can relieve pressure on weakened kidneys, the next food usually triggers even more resistance because it's been blamed for years as something dangerous. I'm talking about plain white pasta. For many kidney patients, pasta became a forbidden food long before it ever caused harm. And that fear, more than the food itself, is what often accelerates decline. I remember a woman in her late 50s who sat across from me looking exhausted and defeated. Her creatinine was climbing. Her GFR had slipped into the low 50s. She told me she had eliminated pasta, rice, and bread, completely replacing them with beans, lentils, and whole grains because she wanted to do everything right. But her labs didn't improve, they worsened. When we slowly reintroduced plain white pasta, something unexpected happened. Her potassium stabilized, her appetite returned, and for the first time in months, she had enough energy to get through the day. The problem was never the pasta, it was what her kidneys were being forced to process instead. Here's the science most people never hear. A 100-gram serving of cooked plain white pasta contains only 30 to 40 milligrams of potassium, placing it firmly in the low potassium range. Whole grain or legume-based pastas, however, can contain 3 to 4 times more potassium, along with added phosphorus, both of which failing kidneys struggle to clear. That extra burden doesn't cause immediate symptoms. It accumulates quietly day after day until labs begin to slide and no one understands why. Plain pasta also plays a critical role beyond minerals. It provides safe calories without excess protein, helping prevent muscle wasting and unintended weight loss. Two factors strongly linked to faster kidney decline. When boiled properly and lightly rinsed, it becomes one of the most kidney-tolerant starches available. But here's the hidden danger: almost everyone misses pasta itself is rarely the threat. What goes on top of it is, tomato sauces, cheese, heavy toppings, and processed meats can instantly turn a kidney-safe base into a potassium and sodium overload. But knowing this still isn't enough, because there's another everyday food people proudly eat, thinking it's healthier, yet it can quietly push potassium higher slice by slice. After understanding that pasta itself isn't the real threat, but rather what's layered on top of it, most people feel relieved. Unfortunately, that relief is often short-lived, because the very next food they reach for is one they've been told to trust for decades. Bread, more specifically whole grain bread. And this is where many kidney patients unknowingly undo their progress one slice at a time. I can't count how many times I've heard this sentence in my office: "Dr. Johnny, I stopped eating white bread years ago. I only eat whole wheat now." One man in his early 70s said this with pride, yet his potassium kept rising, his creatinine stayed unstable, and his GFR continued to fall. When we finally slowed down and examined the details, the issue wasn't how much bread he was eating, but which bread. After replacing dense-seeded whole grain loaves with simple white bread, his post-meal potassium spikes stopped almost immediately. Nothing else changed. That's how quietly powerful this swap can be. Here's the science most people never hear. A single slice of plain white bread typically contains 30 to 40 milligrams of potassium and very little phosphorus. Whole grain or multigrain breads, however, often contain 70 to over 130 milligrams of potassium per slice, especially when seeds bran or phosphate additives are included. For kidneys that are already struggling to eliminate potassium, that difference doesn't cause an instant reaction, it accumulates. Slice by slice, day after day, until labs begin to slide and no one understands why. White bread also plays a role beyond minerals. It provides steady, predictable calories with minimal digestive stress, helping prevent unintentional weight loss and muscle breakdown, both strongly associated with faster kidney decline. When used strategically, 1 to 2 slices a day, lightly toasted, without salty spreads, it becomes a stabilizing food, not a nutritional failure. This isn't about eating backward. It's about supporting your kidneys where they are right now. But knowing which bread to choose still isn't enough, because there's another everyday decision, one involving protein, that can either protect your kidneys quietly or push them closer to the edge without warning. After realizing that carbohydrates aren't the enemy, and that choosing the right starches can actually protect weakened kidneys, most people immediately shift their fear to one-place protein. This is where anxiety quietly takes over, because patients are often told protein damages the kidneys without ever being told which protein, how much, or why. And that misunderstanding alone causes more harm than protein ever could. This is exactly where egg whites change the entire conversation. I remember a man in his late 60s who came into my office visibly weaker than he should have been. His creatinine was elevated, his GFR was slipping, and he admitted something that shocked me. He had almost stopped eating protein altogether. He was terrified that every bite was hurting his kidneys. But what he didn't realize was that his muscle loss, fatigue, and low energy were actually accelerating his decline. When we carefully added egg whites back into his meals, his strength began to return. His labs stabilized. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't choosing between his kidneys and his body anymore. Here's why egg whites are different. One large egg white contains roughly 50 to 55 milligrams of potassium, virtually no phosphorus, and delivers high-quality protein with a very low nitrogen waste burden. Whole eggs, while healthy for many people, contain significantly more phosphorus and fat, both of which stressed kidneys struggle to eliminate. Excess phosphorus and nitrogen contribute to uremic symptoms, inflammation, and fatigue in chronic kidney disease. Egg whites bypass that problem entirely. Clinically, egg whites help maintain muscle mass and albumin levels without driving creatinine upward, which is something many animal proteins can do when portions aren't tightly controlled. 2 to 4 egg whites per day, gently cooked without salt or butter, can provide structure, strength, and stability, especially for older adults trying to avoid frailty as kidney function declines. And this balance matters more than most people realize, because muscle loss isn't just a side effect of kidney disease, it's a predictor of faster progression. But knowing how to choose safe protein still isn't enough, because there's a daily habit, often starting in the morning, that can quietly undo everything you're doing right without you ever suspecting it. After protein finally feels less frightening and meals start to feel more balanced again, most kidney patients assume they're back on safe ground. But this is where progress often stalls in the morning. Breakfast is one of the most underestimated danger zones for declining kidneys, and the culprit is usually something people feel proud of eating: healthy cereal. This is exactly where plain cornflakes quietly outperform foods that sound far better on paper. I remember a woman in her early 60s who couldn't understand why her potassium stayed high despite doing everything right. She exercised, limited salt, followed her doctor's advice, and every morning she ate a bowl of whole grain cereal with nuts and seeds. She thought breakfast was her safest meal. When we broke it down, that single bowl was delivering more potassium than her kidneys could handle all day. We switched her to plain cornflakes with a low-potassium milk alternative, and within 4 weeks her potassium stabilized. Nothing dramatic changed except the silent overload finally stopped. Here's the science that rarely gets explained. 1 cup of plain cornflakes contains only about 20–30 milligrams of potassium, placing it well below the low potassium threshold. Compare that to brand cereals, granola, or whole grain blends, which can easily exceed 200 milligrams of potassium per serving before milk is even added. For kidneys with a declining GFR, that difference isn't small. It's decisive. Cornflakes are also very low in phosphorus and protein, which reduces nitrogen waste during the most sensitive time of day. Predictability is the real advantage here. Kidneys under stress don't respond well to surprises, and many patients experience morning nausea, poor appetite, or unstable labs when breakfast is too heavy. Cornflakes provide gentle energy without demanding extra filtration. The key, of course, is what you pour on top. Regular cow's milk can add 300–400 milligrams of potassium in a single cup, instantly canceling the benefit. Using rice milk or another low-potassium alternative keeps the meal calm and controlled. And this is the deeper lesson: breakfast should settle your system, not test it. But knowing how to build a safe morning meal still isn't enough, because what happens between meals, especially when hunger hits unexpectedly, can quietly undo all that stability if you're not careful. After fixing breakfast, many people feel a sense of relief, like they've finally regained control. But this is where kidney protection quietly breaks down for most patients, and almost no one sees it coming. Snacking. What you reach for between meals often matters just as much as what's on your plate. And this is exactly where unsalted popcorn becomes one of the most overlooked tools for protecting weakened kidneys. I remember a patient who kept asking me the same frustrated question: "Dr. Johnny, why are my potassium levels always higher at night?" His meals were clean. His portions were controlled. But when we looked closely, the answer wasn't dinner. It was everything in between. Crackers, trail mix, almonds, so-called healthy snacks, were quietly stacking potassium and sodium all day long. When we replaced those snacks with simple air-popped popcorn, something surprising happened. His evening potassium spikes disappeared within weeks. Nothing else changed, just that one habit. Here's why popcorn works when it's done right. 1 cup of air-popped unsalted popcorn contains only about 25–30 milligrams of potassium, virtually no phosphorus additives, and almost no sodium. Compare that to nuts protein bars or granola snacks, which can contain 150–300 milligrams of potassium per serving, sometimes more than an entire kidney-safe meal. For kidneys that are already struggling to regulate electrolytes, that difference is enormous. Popcorn also solves another hidden problem: volume without overload. Many kidney patients feel constantly hungry because they're afraid to eat enough. With popcorn, you can eat 3 cups and still stay well within low potassium limits. The fiber helps digestion, which is especially important for people dealing with constipation from fluid restriction or medications. The key is preparation. Butter, salt, cheese powders, and microwave flavor packets turn popcorn into a kidney threat. But lightly air-popped at home, with a small amount of kidney-safe oil, it becomes one of the safest snacks available. And here's the part most people miss: Kidney decline doesn't usually come from big mistakes. It comes from small, repeated choices no one thinks about. But knowing how to snack safely still isn't enough because there's another everyday food people rely on for quick energy that can either stabilize your strength or quietly push potassium into dangerous territory if you choose wrong. After fixing snacks, many patients finally start to feel steadier, less hungry, fewer lab swings, more confidence around food. But this is where another quiet problem shows up, especially when energy drops and weight starts to slip. People reach for something fast, comforting, and filling, and that's exactly when bagels enter the picture. Most kidney patients are told to fear them. In reality, the fear itself often causes more damage than the bagel ever did. I remember a man in his late 60s whose GFR had fallen below 50. His creatinine was climbing, and he looked visibly thinner every time I saw him. He admitted he had almost stopped eating bread entirely. He was afraid of carbohydrates, afraid of doing something wrong, so he replaced bagels and bread with protein bars and multigrain products. His labs worsened, his strength declined, and his fatigue became constant. When we reintroduced a plain white bagel, carefully portioned, something changed. His energy came back, his weight stabilized, and most importantly, his potassium did not spike. Here's the science behind that shift. A standard plain white bagel contains roughly 80 to 120 milligrams of potassium, depending on size and brand. That amount is manageable for many people with reduced kidney function when portions are controlled. Compare that to whole wheat multigrain or seeded bagels, which can easily exceed 200 to 300 milligrams of potassium, especially when phosphate additives are used. For weakened kidneys, that difference alone can decide whether potassium stays stable or quietly creeps into the danger zone. Plain bagels also provide something many kidney patients desperately need: dense, predictable calories with relatively little phosphorus or protein. Unintentional weight loss and muscle wasting are strongly linked to faster kidney decline and higher mortality. Half to one small plain bagel paired with kidney-safe spreads like a thin layer of cream cheese can support strength without overloading filtration. The real danger, again, isn't the bagel, it's what gets added on top. Processed meats, salty cheeses, and tomato-based spreads can instantly turn a safe food into a potassium and sodium trap. But understanding how to use bagels correctly still isn't enough, because when kidney function drops further, there comes a point where even familiar foods feel risky, and that's when a much quieter, rarely discussed starch can become a true lifeline. After familiar foods like bread and bagels start to feel manageable again, many patients are surprised by what happens next. As kidney function declines further, appetite often fades, nausea appears, and eating itself begins to feel risky. This is the stage where people stop asking what's healthy and start asking, what can I eat without making things worse? And this is exactly where tapioca quietly becomes a lifeline. I remember a woman in her early 70s who sat in my office close to tears. Her GFR had fallen into the low 40s, and nearly every meal left her exhausted or nauseated. She was afraid of potassium spikes, afraid of vomiting, afraid of losing more weight. Eating felt like a gamble she was tired of playing. When we introduced small portions of tapioca, something subtle but powerful happened. Her labs stopped swinging wildly, her stomach settled, and for the first time in months, she stopped dreading meals. Here's why tapioca works so well when kidneys are under real stress. Cooked tapioca contains virtually no potassium, about 1 milligram per tablespoon, and almost no phosphorus or sodium. Unlike oats, cream of wheat, or even rice-based porridges, tapioca delivers calories without forcing the kidneys to filter minerals they can no longer clear. This kind of dietary neutrality becomes critical as GFR declines, because even small mineral loads can tip the balance. Tapioca is also exceptionally easy to digest. Many kidney patients struggle with uremia-related nausea medication side effects or early fullness that leads to undereating. Tapioca provides warmth, texture, and energy without irritation. Prepared with water or a low-potassium milk alternative and lightly flavored with cinnamon or vanilla, it becomes soothing rather than stressful. And this matters more than people realize because at later stages of kidney disease, calories become medicine. Maintaining weight and energy can slow decline and preserve independence. But understanding tapioca alone still isn't enough, because when digestion becomes especially sensitive during flare-ups or sudden drops in appetite, there's another starch that's even gentler, even quieter. and often determines whether meals calm the body or push it closer to crisis. After discovering how tapioca can restore calm when eating starts to feel overwhelming, many patients think they've reached the gentlest option possible. But during kidney flare-ups, when digestion becomes unpredictable, appetite disappears, and even safe foods feel heavy, there is another starch that quietly does an even better job at soothing both the gut and the kidneys. This is where arrowroot earns its place, even though most people have never heard of it. I remember a man in his late 60s whose labs had finally begun to stabilize, yet he still felt miserable after meals. He wasn't overeating. He wasn't breaking the rules. But every time he ate, bloating, fatigue, and discomfort followed. The issue wasn't the food itself, it was how his intestines and kidneys were reacting under stress. When we replaced common thickeners and grain-based starches with small amounts of arrowroot, something changed. His meals felt lighter, his digestion calmed, and most importantly, his potassium levels stopped bouncing unpredictably. Here's why arrowroot works so well in this fragile phase. 1 tablespoon of arrowroot contains roughly 10 to 15 milligrams of potassium with no added phosphorus or sodium. Unlike flour cornstarch blends or grain-based thickeners, arrowroot places almost no electrolyte demand on weakened kidneys. When GFR falls below 60 and especially below 45, even these small differences matter. Kidneys lose the ability to correct minor overloads, so foods that appear harmless can quietly push labs out of range. Arrowroot also forms a smooth, soothing gel when cooked, which is why it's traditionally used for nausea medication. Related stomach upset and sensitive digestion. For kidney patients dealing with uremia, reflux, or early fullness, this gentle texture can mean the difference between eating enough or giving up halfway through a meal. Just a teaspoon is often enough, and that's the point. Arrowroot does more with less. And here's what most people never connect when digestion is unsettled. Stress hormones rise, appetite drops, and nutritional gaps widen, indirectly accelerating kidney decline. Arrowroot helps break that cycle by making meals predictable and calm. But knowing this still isn't enough, because there is one final food almost too simple to be taken seriously that often becomes the deciding factor between stable labs and a sudden step toward dialysis. After learning how arrowroot can calm digestion during the most fragile moments, we arrive at the final food, and this one often feels almost too simple to matter. Many people dismiss it at first. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't sound like medicine. Yet in real clinical practice, cornstarch porridge often becomes the quiet line between stability and a rapid slide toward dialysis. I've worked with patients whose GFR had dropped into the 30s, sometimes even lower. Nearly every meal caused nausea, a metallic taste, crushing fatigue, or anxiety about potassium spikes. Eating wasn't nourishment anymore. It was a daily battle. When cornstarch porridge was introduced slowly, something shifted. Their bodies finally received energy without triggering electrolyte surges or digestive distress. Their labs didn't magically return to normal, but they stopped getting worse. And in advanced kidney disease, stopping the slide is a victory most people underestimate. Here's why cornstarch works when so many other foods fail. Cooked cornstarch contains only 2 to 5 milligrams of potassium per tablespoon, with no natural phosphorus or sodium. That means a half-cup serving of properly prepared porridge stays far below daily potassium limits. Compare that to oats or dairy-based porridges, which can quietly deliver hundreds of milligrams of potassium before you realize it. For kidneys that can no longer adapt, that difference isn't minor, it's decisive. Cornstarch porridge is also soft, bland, and easy to tolerate during uremia, when taste changes, nausea, and early fullness make normal meals impossible. Prepare gently with water or a low-potassium milk alternative, and lightly flavored with cinnamon or a touch of honey, it becomes comforting rather than stressful. And that comfort matters. Stress hormones and undereating accelerate kidney decline just as much as mineral overload does. At this stage, food is no longer about variety or enjoyment. It's about preserving function. Cornstarch gives the body energy while allowing the kidneys a rare moment of rest. And that pause for many patients is what delays dialysis longer than anyone expected. But knowing which foods help isn't the final step, because what truly determines outcomes is how consistently and calmly you apply these choices day after day. Before we end, I want you to hear this clearly. Kidney disease is not a personal failure, and it is not the end of your story. If you're still watching right now, it means you care about your health. And that already puts you ahead of millions of people who never learn what's happening inside their bodies until it's too late. Every small choice you make, every portion you adjust, every meal you simplify, gives your kidneys a better chance to keep working for you. If this video helped you understand your kidneys even a little more, please save it. Come back to it when you're tired, confused, or unsure what to eat. These foods and strategies aren't about perfection. They're about consistency, calm, and control. And if kidney health matters to you or to someone you love, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. I share clear research-based guidance to help you lower creatinine, protect your GFR, and make daily decisions that support your kidneys without fear or extreme diets. Most importantly, don't lose hope. I've seen many patients slow their decline, stabilize their labs, and regain confidence simply by learning how to eat and live in a way their kidneys can tolerate. Progress doesn't come from doing everything right. It comes from doing the right things over and over again. You are not alone on this path. Stay informed, stay consistent, and keep choosing habits that give your kidneys the best possible chance one day at a time.